And now we have a sponsor perspective portion of our program. Before we get underway, a quick clarification. While this interview is being conducted by me and these questions are mine, this content should be considered not editorial. With that, I'm joined by Qualcomm's Vice President of Public Affairs, Christine Trimble. Christine, it's great to see you. Are you in San Diego right now?
I am, Steve. And
I love San Diego, and we're jealous and envious. The light there is better. That's all I can say.
I thought I would make you jealous and sit outside, but it might be a little loud.
Oh, that's great. Well, listen, we've been talking a lot about connectivity, and Qualcomm, you know, many people may not understand, but Qualcomm is sort of the fundamental technology for lots of the internet infrastructure that we've had. We're talking about healthcare and education. But there were previous Gs. We're talking a lot about 5G today, but we'll go back to the 3G world in which Irwin Jacobs and his team, and you, Irwin Jacobs, the founder of Qualcomm, I have the privilege of interviewing Irwin in the past. But I'm just interested in when you were at that 3G moment before we had that national infrastructure, and people used to think Qualcomm was going to be a failure. I remember those days as well. Did you see ahead? Did you see what was going to be coming in the future? How prescient were you, or did you just accidentally succeed?
Well, it's fascinating to be where we're at now and to think back what it was like then. In fact, we're celebrating our 35th anniversary year. This month, the company was founded in July of 1985 by Irwin Jacobs, as you noted, and we actually had Dr. Jacobs host an event for employees this month, and he talked a lot about the history of Qualcomm and what it was like to introduce a technology at a time when the industry was going in a different direction, that was CDMA technology. And I feel fortunate that I was able to be part of that effort and advocacy efforts to help get that technology deployed and commercialized around the world. And it was at that time in '85, Dr. Jacobs actually told employees that that we are here because someday everyone will have their own phone number. And if you think about that, it was at that time it was really hard to imagine that and that networks could be made that powerful and more reliable. But at the same time, we're seeing now an explosion of network capability. According to the GSMA, there are more wireless subscribers in sub-Saharan Africa than there are in North America, which is just so interesting, I think. There's a lot that I think people take for granted now. I have a son who's a college sophomore, and he doesn't really know a world where without being able to stream his favorite shows on his phone or use Instagram on his phone. And I'm just in awe of how far that the company has come and that the world has come in that period.
Well, this is a little bit off script, but I want to share it. Years ago, I did an article on the Qualcomm Foundation and some of the things you were funding, and they were just kind of like, you know, weird little tracks, you know, in a cool way. But you know, one of the things that you funded, I found fascinating, because the cell phone and smartphone deployment in Africa was so high. You were funding health programs so that people, you know, a female cotton farmer in Congo knew more about her vital signs and health data and statistics than any of my family members in America did. And so there was a time where you were already innovating and experimenting in the healthcare space and connectivity and smartphones years ago. And today we're talking about that kind of craze and new opportunities today in America. But you know, do you have any insights into that? Because I found that to be one of the smartest. I used to talk about it all the time, saying, how can people in Congo be so far ahead of what's going on than the United States in healthcare and connectivity?
Yeah, there's so many examples of that. I think one of the things that has been inherent in Qualcomm and in our culture of R&D is to develop the technology before people really know what the exact need is. And the example that you're giving of the usage of it for medical information is a perfect one. I remember our former CTO and one of the original 7 executives who started Qualcomm used to tell a story about when he went to global standards organizations and said, we need to design a system that can accommodate more data. And these senior reps from companies worldwide said, no, why would we want to do that? We get text and email on our phones. Why would we need that? And so I think that set Qualcomm off also on developing the capability to get large amounts of data on your phone and to send and receive, and to really put the capability out there, give people the tools, and then see what how the technology would be used. One of the other things I think people don't realize is that Qualcomm had come up with the first CMate smartphone and had to do that, demonstrate it by basically taping together a PDA with another voice phone to be able to make the point that you will want to get all of your data, you will want to use your phone as a computer in the future. And in fact, Qualcomm also came up with the first app store, which the diagram for that is in the Patent and Trademark Office on a picture of a whiteboard. Susie Armstrong, who's speaking, I know, a little later, a senior VP of engineering at Qualcomm, actually walked through that exhibit, saw the picture of that whiteboard with the design of the App Store and said, hey, I actually wrote the code for that App Store. So
Right.
It just goes back to show you a lot of the work that's done in the case of 5G 10 years prior to the technology being rolled out. The work is being done to give people the capabilities on which to come up with the different use cases. And I think now that we're in the environment we're in and in this global crisis, we're going to see more and more use in remote education and healthcare, just as you're saying. I think
Right.
that even as we return to what is a new normal, that distance learning, remote healthcare, remote working, I think
Sure.
that all of those things are here to stay.
Right. Well, you've just covered, a lot, which I was going to ask you about. But we've added you went from 3G, then we added another G. It reminds me of Tigger. You know how do you spell Tigger? T-I-double-G-R. And so you added another G. And so you get to 4G, and we've been talking about it today a little bit about how this created new opportunities on data transfer, and all of a sudden we see firms like Uber and Lyft emerge. So what is the what is the appetite? What is the thing that drives your engineers and thinkers forward? Because you haven't stopped. So you did 3G to 4G, and now 4G, we're now moving into a 5G world. And what is that appetite so that we can make this not just sort of a discussion about this static moment, but what drives that process as we look at how you're revolutionizing opportunities for business, how kids are learning, what we're doing with telemedicine and telehealth, all of that. Christine?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, you're not hearing the kinds of skepticism or naysayers now around 5G. I think people have come to expect that they're going to have high-speed data on their phones. They have for a decade and a half or so. And I think that with 5G, where it's not just about people connecting to people, but it's about connecting everything to everything. So everything from a small appliance in your kitchen to the largest supercomputer you can imagine. And just connecting everything, I think we're going to see a much more safer and more connected world with those opportunities. And you think about everything from medical devices, hospitals, traffic signals, industrial machinery, farming, farms, cities. It's kind of an endless list where everything is connected. And I think this is really, this is one of those breakthrough technologies, as you said, in the 2G, 3G, 4G, and now 5G that Qualcomm has been working at the core of for many years.
Well, Christine, I hope we can do a deal. And my boss is sitting here, so he's watching. But I want to do a deal, and we'll leave it off the record if that's okay, Bob. But I want to go, and we've been discussing all this stuff we've done in the past. But I want to see what's coming next. I kind of like the crystal ball stuff. I'll keep it off. I just want to go to Qualcomm and just see what the next 6G, 7G world is going to look like. Okay, after we get, is that a deal? You accept?
Yeah, well, why don't we get a crystal ball out and start to look 10 years ahead?
Okay, that would be great. Well, Christine, thank you so much for joining us.
I'm really excited about everything that our engineers are working on.
That's great. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for supporting today's program.
Thank you, Steve, for having us, and thank you to the Hill for hosting this
Thank you.
event.